Hey everybody, how are you? Good to see you today. Good to see each and every one of you. Well, there has been a thread that's going around, and I'd like to jump in on part of the thread and be a part of it. Paul Fit to be Tie-Dyed and me, Mr. Mayo Joe, as we all know him, has been a part of this. And the thread that's going around is, did the Beatles spoil us or spoil you? Yes, I would say they did. The Beatles to me are like no other band that I've ever dealt with or enjoyed or listened to. Um, as you can see in my thumbnail, that's a picture that my sister took when she was quite young also, and she put the guitar, and those were just a couple of her records. Um, as you can see, those are my sister's records. So to be influenced and spoiled by the Beatles, yes, I really was. And I'm struggling for words because my mind is going everywhere, and I could fill in an hour's worth of topic of how the Beatles spoiled me. So I'm doing this off the cuff. I'm trying not to do it with notes or anything like that because I wanted to be fresh and I wanted to be real. I didn't want to have 3 pages of notes and just sit here and read off notes going, yes, I like the Beatles. You know, I didn't want to do that. So to begin with, my sister was a big influence on the Beatles, and as you can see in my thumbnail picture, she took that picture, and that's her guitar and the influence of all of that. So it was influence. I had an older brother, and I had an older sister, and the two of them were very much into Beatles. My sister was to a point, but my brother was much older than I was. My brother's like 11 years older than me. So he was into Zeppelin, the Doors, the Beach Boys, the Beatles, the Stones, you know, all the rock bands. So I pretty much really got influenced and started hearing a lot of stuff from him. So to be spoiled by the Beatles is really an understatement. I went out, for instance, let me give you a for instance. I went out the other day and I bought an album by an artist that I do like, but I don't have much by this artist. So I went and bought the album, and it says, and the cool part about it is the album's from Germany, or I think it might be England. Actually, it might be England. Take that back. And the album says such and such hit. Okay, well, it has that hit. Yes, it does. So we really weren't thrown off by the fact that it didn't have that hit on there. But that was the only hit, and the rest of the album was a filler. The rest of the album dragged. The rest of the album was slow. The music had no life in it, really. And I didn't pay much for the album, and that's good because it really wasn't worth what I paid for it. So I am spoiled by the Beatles because I can pull up this album, Abbey Road, and I can just start shooting off songs that were just iconic songs of Come Together, Something. I mean, Come Together is just a rockin', incredible album, an incredible song. I'm getting flustered here. Bentley just walked in, my puppy. He just walked in to say hello to everybody. You gonna say hello, Mr. Bentley? No, he's camera shy. Back to Come Together. What a song. This was kind of a great song. And Something, George Harrison, he brought this through. Octopus's Garden. I mean, there's songs on this album that just is incredible. And then the Beatles do a walk across. It's just a regular level crossing, like any level crossing in London. And as my people that are overseas in London know, this is just like any level crossing. This isn't anything special. It's out in front of the Abbey Road studio. Yes, I'll give you that. But they're walking across. Well, now we've got other groups that did this as well. So other groups have mimicked and followed the Beatles in doing the Abbey Road walk across. even if you're not into the Beatles or spoiled or even understand the Beatles, you've seen this album. And it's just a fantastic album. It's an album that's just been unbelievable. So we were spoiled by so much music, so much rich and good music, that we're not only talking about a band, yes, but we're talking about John Lennon, who was a phenomenal songwriter and singer and a fabulous musician. George Harrison, who took us in different ways that we have never been in music history. George Harrison introduced us into sitars and tubera drums. I'm sorry, I can't say it, so I'm moving on. Introduced us into different things with Don't Bother Me with the tambura drum. I guess that's it. George introduced us into the Eastern cultural of music and expanded our minds. And George Harrison did a lot of stretching of himself. And not only did he stretch himself, but he stretched us with him. And he spoiled us in the aspect that he brought us into different music than we never heard before. And then George did a lot of that as well, which was just great. And then we have Ringo Starr. Ringo kept the rhythm for the Beatles in every song they did, from I Want to Hold Your Hand to the end of Get Back. Ringo was that strong person in the band, I feel, that kept the band together in lots of ways. When they were kind of drifting away or kind of having problems and wanted to break up, Ringo definitely held the band together in doing the aspects. So Ringo Starr spoiled us in the aspect that he was a great drummer. A lot of people don't think he is, but Ringo was a good drummer and still is a good drummer to this day. Saw him last year in concert. He was phenomenal. All right, leads us up to Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney is, I feel, today's equivalent to a Bach or a Beethoven or a Mozart of rock and roll music. Paul McCartney has put his hands on gold on every song that's either come about. To go into this album, Sgt. Pepper, we were spoiled by Sgt. Pepper. This is the new one, which is fantastic. The new one with Paul McCartney. Every single song on here that Paul McCartney did just blew our minds. It really did. There were songs on this album that just was fantastic. Paul had a way of taking a song that you've never heard before, like Sgt. Pepper, a song you've never heard before, and then next thing you know, you're going to work or you're driving somewhere, you're going out to dinner, and next thing you know, you're humming in your head a song. And it's the Beatles. So by each four-person, John, Paul, George, and Ringo all coming together as one unit, as one band, revolutionized the world of music. And are still doing that today in 2018. Here we are still talking about them. Those of us that are collectors, yeah, we collect other people as well. There's other bands, but other bands kind of come and go. They don't hold us. I'm speaking for me. They don't hold us as well as the Beatles did, and still do. As you saw in some of my other videos, my brother was a huge music person. He influenced me in getting a lot of albums and discussions, and he was real big in the rock world. I went with my brother to go see a lot of concerts, got backstage to see The Who, got backstage to go see the Police, went to go see Sting. But they didn't captivate me like the Beatles do. The Beatles, if I can say, the Beatles captivate into your DNA almost, to where we pull out stuff like I Am the Walrus, And yes, it's kind of strange and kind of out there, but it sticks in your head and you're spoiled by it to where you want to hear I Am the Walrus again, and you're like, let's hear that again. Or Penny Lane, or Within You Without You, or Magical Mystery Tour, or Day in a Life, or Strawberry Fields Forever, um, In My Life. You know, I could just go on and on and on about how the songs spoiled each and every one of us. So much so that the Beatles, the artwork, I think even, you know, nobody's even mentioned this, but I think the artwork on every one of the albums draws into the album. I could spend hours looking at this album and this album. Sorry about the glare. You could just pull yourself in looking at these album covers, and you're spoiled in the aspect that the album covers, like Sgt. Pepper, you can get really spoiled just by looking at Sgt. Pepper, and as you're listening to the album, you're drawn into the album and looking at the picture. That's why I like the albums a whole lot better than CD. It's because you're drawn in and you become part of all of that. And you really enjoy the aspect of listening to each and every song. Not every song the Beatles did was just a smash hit, but I like even some of the obscure stuff. It's All Too Much was a great song, an underrated song. Almost could do something on a video about It's All Too Much. It's Only a Northern Song, another song off Yellow Submarine. Only a Northern Song is a fantastic song. It is a really good rocker song, and it's definitely underrated. People haven't paid attention to it as much as some of the other classics. But yes, so the Beatles have spoiled me in the aspect that they're accessible too. That's the other thing. You know, we've got Beatles books. We've got, in the old days, we got cassettes. And this is a radio, kind of a documentary, or not a radio, but it's a documentary, kind of like a book on tape. So we can learn about Beatles on tapes. We learn about Beatles in videos. We've got their concerts. The Beatles were a lot more accessible, I think, than a lot of other bands, to where a lot of bands you didn't get to follow them as well as the Beatles. This is a wild topic. I kind of, like I said, I struggle with it because I can go lots of different ways in saying how I feel about how they spoiled me. Like I said, I've recently picked up this album, and it only had one song, and the rest of it was filler, and it's not that great. And I picked up a few other albums of different artists that I looked forward to getting. And there's lots of times where you buy albums, even today, you know, the people are talking about how lousy music is. Well, that's because you only get one hit, maybe 2 hits on an album. But like Sgt. Pepper, you're looking at maybe 5 or 6 hits on one album. So I don't think we'll ever see another day of where the Beatles are duplicated like they are. And yes, they have spoiled us. And for those of you who are not my regular Beatle followers, or you really are just now starting to experiment with the Beatles, if you go and purchase, even on CD, let's go to Revolver. Just get Revolver, and this will this will blow your mind. Revolver. Tomorrow Never Knows. Oh my gosh, what a crazy wild song! But you know, Drive My Car, a fantastic song by Paul McCartney that's just unreal. Drive My Car and I'm Only Sleeping. There's songs on there that'll just captivate you. But when you're listening to the album, also take a look at the album cover itself. And the CDs, I think you get lost in the CDs. You can't really spend time in watching and looking at those as much as the album covers. But let me know, have the Beatles captivated you? Have they spoiled you to where you only enjoy listening to the Beatles? And yes, you do listen to other bands like a lot of us, but the Beatles are still number one. Um, if the Beatles really aren't number one, we had Sgt. Pepper come out last year and broke world records all over the world for Sgt. Pepper box set, which came with a book, CDs, DVDs, outtakes, unseen pictures before, and it just spoiled us in that because we got spoiled, and we're so spoiled that this year we're excited to see what's going to come out for next in the Beatles because we were so spoiled by Pepper. Every one of us is excited and looking forward to seeing what's coming out. So we shall see what it will be. Thank you so much for watching this segment. It's an interesting topic. I could say a whole lot more, and I'm kind of rambling on a lot of it. But let me know what you thought of the Beatles. Did they influence you to where you were spoiled of listening to Abbey Road or Sgt. Pepper or Magical Mystery or even I Want to Hold Your Hand? Maybe you remember the very beginning days. I've got another story that's coming up. I'm trying to find a friend of mine. She's a real good close friend, an older lady. And she was spoiled by the Beatles because she originally saw them in the Cavern Club in Liverpool. She grew up with Ringo Starr in Liverpool, and I'm trying to get an interview with her, but she's very, very camera shy, and she doesn't want to do it. But she went to school with Ringo, and she went to go see them in the Cavern, and she was very much spoiled. So there's a whole different aspect of saying I've spoiled because I saw, not me, she saw the Beatles in concert before the Beatles really became famous, and she said you could understand them and hear them, and she said I was spoiled that I didn't have to go to a Shea Stadium. I didn't have to go to Candlestick Park. I didn't have to go to Germany to hear the Beatles perform. She said I saw them in the Cavern Club and was as close to them as you are to me. I would love to get an interview with her. Sometime, someday, maybe we will, but that's just in time. But, you know, that made me think about it because she was spoiled by the Beatles. So, all right, little footnote on the end there, just of a friend of mine, and maybe we can get that together. All right, well, this is my topic of how the Beatles spoiled me. Let me know down below. Subscribe to my channel. Let me know how the Beatles spoiled you. Did they spoil you, or have they continued to spoil you? So let me know what you think. And as I say, I appreciate each and every one of you watching my channel. Thank you to my new subscribers. Hey, everybody. Welcome to my channel. I'm really thrilled to have each and every one of you with me. And it's such a blessing to have each and every person here just letting me talk about the Beatles. As you can see around my room, they're such an influence that I've even got a Beatles room. So it has continued. So like I said, let me know down below what you think. Have the Beatles spoiled you? All right. Well, as I say on my channel, I am out of here. Take care, everybody. And spoiled Beatle Brad is out of here. See ya.